we're going to move forward to chapter 5. So chapter 5 is about how do you work with transport, either your own vehicles or with the transport company that you work with. And I do believe that in most of the case is either one or both. So the first one asks, in selecting transport option to the destination, a policy is followed to select the most sustainable option. So this consider international and national destination. If you an outbound tour operator, international destination, so transferring from the country where your client is based to the destinations with you operating, is probably not relevant for you in case you inbound tour operator and you work with an outbound tour operator from overseas. However, national destination is applicable for your case. So if you bring your client to different destinations within your country, then the most sustainable option needs to be considered. So, for example, for destination that doesn't take too far, that might take, for example, 4 hours on wheels from place A to place B, but you would choose flight instead, then it's not the most sustainable options. Then in that sense, we would say for you to, we would recommend you to switch to the 4-wheel drive if it's possible. So you can, so this one asks if you do have a policy in place to use sustainability arguments when you make a certain decisions regarding choosing vehicles for your tours. So for example, you can have a policy that say, if it's a destination that's less than 100 kilometers, then air transfer is not considered, for example. Or you can even make it more specific within your destination that you know from place A to place B, there are different options of transportation, and the 4 wheels option should always be considered before airplanes, or train will be considered before using or before considering the flight. This does not mean that if your client do request to take a flight, you just refuse it and decline the request of your client and say that because we work with Travel Life, so we do not offer flights for this route at all. We never ask you to do. We never ask you to give up your market, but we ask you to give your clients options and the clear sustainability credential from each of the option. Decision is up to your clients to choose. But at least if you have the power to choose the transportation for your clients, then it should always be the first recommended option. It should always be the sustainable, the more sustainable mean of transport. So that is the explanation for 5.1. For 5.2, this is about if you do offset the carbon emission for the international flights, but if you do not offer international flights or not responsible for international flights, then you can click on NA. Transfer to departure airport. So this is when your client have to transfer to any departure airport. So either departure back to their own country or departure for flying to a new destinations within the country that you're operating in. Then the more sustainable means of transport is considered. So, for example, you would recommend them to use public transportation if public transportation is credible to use. In many Asian countries, I do understand that the public transportation is not good enough, is not reliable enough for you to feel confident to book that for your clients or to even recommend this to your clients. But then you have sit-in coach, you have shared vehicles. So if that is an option, then you can also integrate it in your policy that you would recommend your clients to share vehicles to the departure airport as much as possible. But for example, if you do tailor-made tours and you do it for a group of like 3, 4, or even 2 people, and they have always been on private transport, and just to complete the quality of the tour, you can't share them to, you can't put them in a shared coach for departure to airport, then that of course understandable, and then you only need to explain to us here under the text box with your specific nature of tours that you offer to your client, or because a specific segment of market that you're catering to that is not possible to offer this. So any explanation is welcome, because as long as you give a reasonable explanation, then we would consider from our side. We do not have a certain benchmark for any criteria in our travel life reporting, because we do understand the difference in the context of different country and in the context of different business. 5.4 is about local transport. So this asks if you do prioritize a local transport and more sustainable alternatives when you operate tours. And this means that, for example, you would, if certain destinations have bike rentals, for example, you would rather rent the bike from that destination instead of bringing it all the way from the destination where your office is based. And here I'm talking about the same within the country. I'm not talking about cross country, or if or within one destination, so one province, for example. You try to maximize the use of walking instead of using motorized vehicles, or the use of bicycle over motorized vehicles, then it is applicable for this situation. And always we do mention taking into account price, comfort, and practical consideration. So again, it's not that we ask you to give up a certain thing to apply more sustainable alternatives in your tours that do not satisfy your client. Your client satisfaction should always be put as priority, but then also considering how elastic can they go with their satisfaction, how far can they go with choosing a certain vehicles for you to recommend it to them. But at least you need to have options available with sustainability credentials. When you say we want to promote cycling tours for the city trip, because then, you know, for today you would save 10 tons of carbon emissions by switching from 4-wheel drive to cycling. So when you give them a specific credentials of how much carbon emission they save by choosing one transport mean over another mean, it gives them the incentives to choose a more sustainable alternative. But if they still prefer 4-wheel drive because it's too hot outside, no, we don't want to cycle, no, we do not want to take walk, then of course 4-wheel drives is still can be still included in your tour offer. 5.5 is on bus and coach safety. So this asks that minimum quality and safety arguments need to be considered before you selecting a transport company to work with, or before you select any vehicle to use for your tours. So it means that considering the years of production, because it always defines how much fuels it consumes per kilometer, the size of the car with the size of your group. So there's many and a certain safety argument inside the car. So those are the standards that you could apply with the transport companies. So so whatever criteria that is, you need to specify to us that here are the criteria regarding quality and safety that we have set for our transportation company. Again, this is a non-mandatory criteria. So if you sort of having it verbally, so you know that when you choose the vehicles, you come over, you look at the vehicles, you know the years of production, you know the name of the brand, and you sort of talk with the drivers about how much fuel does it cost. Then you also need to brief to us here that we have done this verbally, but here are the things that we have talked about when we do it verbally with the transport companies. 5.6 is about if you have codes of conduct for drivers, and this is not just a normal etiquette codes of conduct for drivers, for how the drivers should be, how they should be clean, what should they do when they wait for the client, so certain business ethics. But this also are specifically if you also give them some sustainable driving techniques. And this criteria is mandatory here, at least for Indonesia. So you can always go to Guidon to see some of the driving tips that you could give to your drivers on how to drive sustainably, which means that they would save fuel and would make the car more durable in a long term. So in a sense, the quality is actually the argument here when it comes to sustainable driving techniques. So if you don't have it yet, you need to create an action plan for adding those sustainable driving techniques into the code of conduct that you already have for the drivers that you work with. 5.7, asking if you do have sustainable packages. So I'm just to make sure again, so the full understanding, the full perceptions of the majority of tour operators still thinking sustainable is a type of tourism. So I already saw some travel life companies make the mistake that they, on their website, they have different criteria of the types of tours that they offering. So they have community-based tourism, they have ecotourism, and then they have another criteria called sustainable tours. So by having a specific criteria on sustainable tours, you basically tell your clients that the rest of the tours you're offering are not sustainable. So you don't want to have, first, you don't want to create that wrong perception and the wrong idea, even though you're doing it right regarding sustainability, but because of the incorrect way of communication that might create a wrong image over your company. So sustainability is a lifestyle that you can apply throughout your tours. As we go through the whole travel life reporting together, you can see that sustainability also means how do you work with your employees? So those employees who create the tours for you, how responsible are you towards those people? How responsible are you by choosing a certain vehicles, which for any types of tours, for luxury tours, for city tours, vehicles included. So just by choosing the less fuel consumed vehicle is already considered sustainable. Do you train your tour guide? And most of the tours have tour guides, so as long as you train your tour guide often and you mention to them about sustainability aspect in the destination, it's already considered another sustainable components of your tours. So there's no sustainable tours. They are the maximized sustainability practice in any tours. So just again, brief you about the understanding of using sustainable when it comes to your tours, whether you should activate it as the type of tour types, you know, right next to luxury tour, right next to city tours, right next to eco tours, or you should mention under your sustainability page that with every tours, here are the things that you pay attention at, so that you know that whatever types of tour they're taking, their sustainability practice are maximized. So really think carefully about how you use this word sustainability when it comes to flagging your tours. So back to our criterion, sustainable packages. This one we ask if you have one tours where your sustainability practice are maximized. And by maximize, we mean that you do include many sustainable transport. So 40% of the time during the tours are on foot, on bicycle, for example, or sustainable accommodation, as in 30% out, or like 40 or 50% of the hotels have sustainability certification. And sustainable activities, as in that you have activities with homestay, that with the local communities, you have that any activities that help the local community or help the economic growth of the local communities by purchasing different services from that local communities. Or if you go to a nature reserve where you pay the entrance fee and you follow a certain code of conduct from that nature reserve, that do practice sustainability welfare for the fauna and flora within a protected area. So it's about how many sustainability practice that you put in that tour that you're so proud of, that you want to show to Travel Live, and you want to promote this tour towards your clients instead of choosing a classic tours from your destination. Then you can attach that tour here. So the requirement is that you need to attach one tour that you're so proud of, that you have, that you maximize the sustainability practice on that tour. Then after attaching the tour, so you can attach the itinerary of the tour here and explain to us why do you think this tour is sustainable. So just repeat myself again, so you can say again that, you know, like 40% is on food and on bicycle, accommodation is like this, activity, sustainable activities is like this, then that's why we think that this tour is sustainable package. Yeah. So that is chapter 5.